All right, wood grain tumblers. Next to the hydro dip, this is one of my favorite ways to do a tumbler. It's especially good for guys, for making the whiskey barrel or for making baseball bat or whatever you want to do with your wood grain. Now I have a prepped cup, so it is sanded, washed, and spray painted. This is a flat white spray paint. Flat will give you, be easier to work with than gloss for this. I have two colors of inks. I have Tim Holtz teakwood, and I have Let's Resin coffee. You can use one color, two color, three colors, doesn't matter. I'm not sure which ones I'm going to use today. You will want a container with a lid. You're going to put some alcohol in here and then keep just the lid on there so the alcohol doesn't evaporate. And you want isopropyl alcohol. It can be 70%, 91%, doesn't matter. I have a piece of paper towel and I have these two brushes. This one right here, it's called a chip brush. It's super cheap. This one's a 1 inch. When you get a chip brush, you're gonna wanna just pull and make sure that there's no loose bristles. The second brush is a foundation brush. And you'll notice that it's fairly thin. That's the wide side and the thin side. It's fairly firm as well. It is called a foundation brush, but you don't want the ones that's fully round. You don't need both of these brushes. One is just fine. I just want to show you two different techniques today to do your wood grain. So we'll pour a little bit of isopropyl alcohol in there. It doesn't need to be a lot. You can always add more. So first technique is, I would say, a little easier to do, but it is going to use more ink. So to do this technique, I'm going to just hold this, and you'll notice I do have this on the arm. That makes it easier. When I'm done, I can put this on a drying rack and not have to touch, because the ink will be slightly sticky and it will leave marks if you try and grab it. So for this, I'm going to hold it at a slight angle, like, 30 degrees. I'm going to do a line down here, and I'm going to do just like that. And another one. And just like that. Fill in the spots. Really, really easy, guys. Don't overthink wood grains. Right now, you'll probably, if this is your first cup, you'll be like, oh my goodness, this looks awful. And you can already see the wood grains starting to appear there. One thing I do like to do, I do prefer to do the bottom first. Because you're gonna end up with some brush marks. You can see how this is slightly gone over the edge, and I'd rather, if there's some wonky lines, for it to be on the bottom and not on the side. So again, I'm gonna just hold it at a slight angle, do a little line down that way, and just brush. And beside it, and brush. So really, really easy technique. This cup is a little harder to do because it's not like the 20-ounce skinnies or 30-ounce skinnies. Now notice if I go over it, it's gone lighter like that. So you do want to be aware of that, which is fine. You'll see I'm using a fair bit of ink on this. And I'm kind of getting some ink splatter there, so make sure you've set something down. Just a little line and brush until you've got it all. Notice if I start in the middle here, like that, I don't want to do that as much. I want to start a line at the top and work all the way down. You can also use just a little bit of alcohol. That's way too much. Never try and brush that right on. You want to take as much off of it as you possibly can and then brush. So really easy. And you're starting to get that wood grain. Just a tiny little drop in there. Brush it off. All right, you can probably see a little better now. So I'm just brushing it. Just a teeny tiny drop in there, barely touching it. Blot it off, and then you can touch it. And see how I'm getting little errors on the side here? That's why we want to do that. The bottom works out better first. And you just want to keep working it. Just make sure you're going all the way up and all the way down. Don't do the all the way up and all the way down. That's when you get some weird marks. So as you can see, I've got a decent little wood grain going there. I'm going to switch sides and I'm going to show you a different technique. So this one is using this brush. Now, the nice thing about this one is that you're going to use less ink, but you will get a less dark shade from it. So we're going to do a little there. I'm going to touch that at the top, and then we're going to brush all of it off, and then you get these really nice marks there. You can see that I still have ink, or I still have alcohol on that. And we're going to do another drop and brush it down. See, and you can see it's working its way that way. And we'll do another line. You can pull the inks that way, get a little bit more of a grain. You can add just a little bit more. You just basically touch the surface, dab it off. If you take too much off, just do it again. It's still got too much alcohol on, but that is okay. You get a really nice graining that way. You just want to make sure, so see here, I didn't start at the very top. You always want to start your strokes at the very top, or you'll end up with these kind of little gravelly spots that then need to be worked out. All right, so you have your first way there. That's a little bit easier to achieve, takes a little less skill. And then you have right there, my preferred way with this brush. The brush is a little more expensive, but you can clean it off with alcohol after. So because I like this one better, I'm actually just gonna go over this and smooth out the lines a little bit. But you will notice that this, done with this brush, is a lot lighter than this, done with this brush. So, and that's all done, right? So far, I've only used the Tim Holtz teakwood. And then I'll show you a different color. So you can, if you want, vary the colors. This is the coffee from Let's Resin. You can pull the ink with little strikes, and then littler strikes, and littler strikes, and you'll get that kind of thing. Okay, So just if you want to get some more graining in it. I think I am liking the Tim Hortons better today. The nice thing with this is that you can't really go wrong with it. If you don't like it, you keep working it and it will be just fine. Let's take a little bit more alcohol, tap it off, and go lightly. It's totally okay to not be happy with it at this point too. Oftentimes you'll see like all of the imperfections rather than what you've actually accomplished. You'll notice that right here, it's a little lighter. It's almost got some white spots in it. That's totally fine. That just gives it more aging. So you'll notice that there's some little inconsistencies at the bottom now. But like I said, I'd rather have it on the bottom than on the top. You can work on pulling that, but be careful because you can end up going through it. If you do end up going through a little more than you want, just put a little dot on there. Just gonna use just a little drop of that. Get it off again. And go really gentle. Notice how if there's a spot I don't like, I'm just dabbing on the bottom, getting it out and then streaking. This is a Contigo, so this part gets covered anyways, so I'm not too concerned about it. Don't try and patch a little spot. You'll see when I try and patch a little spot like this, I end up pulling ink from it. Whereas if I go with a really nice long streak, then by the time that I have gotten back up to the top, the ink has dried enough that I can actually have it stay there. So I have my wood grain. Now, if you want to do a knot, what we're gonna do is we're gonna use this paintbrush. You can also use, like if you have one that's smaller, that's totally fine too. And we're gonna find our spot. Usually I look for the spot that like looks the worst. I also like to, if I have a lighter side, that's usually a good side if you're gonna put a decal on, especially if you're going for a water slide. So I'll go, where do I wanna put one? Let's put it right here. Okay, so we're gonna do our, how big we want our knot to end up. We're gonna do it just slightly smaller than that. And we're gonna do this, we're gonna draw a line with our ink in about an oval shape. And you can have it as long and skinny or as wide and fat as you want. Just like that, okay? And we're gonna take this and we're just going to dab it. Make sure you don't want it to be too wide. You don't want it to be too regular. See how this has kind of got a little funky loop thing there? That is totally fine. Okay, so once that's done, we're gonna do another loop. We're gonna do it slightly smaller this time, okay? And we're going to just dab again, slightly smaller, dab again. This is why a smaller paintbrush is nice. All right, we're gonna do slightly smaller and just use the side of your paint or edge of your paintbrush. If you are not happy with that, totally fine. You have not ruined your thing. You're going to use this. Dab a little bit again in, brush it off, and go from the top. If that's still not working enough for you, just do a nice line. So I was finding that this was getting a little too regular, so that's why I put another line in, just to break up that, break it up and make it look a little bit more liney, which is what we want. All right, you are with, as far as sealing goes, you can seal your alcohol ink. However, I would suggest waiting it still a day before sealing. If you seal it, go with very, very light sprays of your clear spray paint. I have seen people spray too heavy, get a glob of the spray paint and have it actually move the ink and make it just ruin it. So personally, I do not generally seal my cups, the wood grain cup that is. I will leave this for at least 24 hours, make sure it's not in a humid environment. And then I will epoxy it. I do not recommend doing anything else on this layer before you epoxy it, because there's a good chance that some of the ink will still end up in the epoxy, which is fine. You won't notice it, besides it maybe being a little bit lighter. But if you try and put like a decal down or something, it may end up making the epoxy look slightly yellowed. So nothing else besides epoxy for this layer. And if for some reason, if you were doing a peekaboo or something where you have to, you can use the clear spray paint to seal it, but still wait a day and go very, very light. Do a couple of coats. These brushes can get washed. You can use your inks to try, or to see all that extra ink that's coming off. And then I will wash them with soap and water and they will be good to use again. Thank you for watching.